We get questions all the time from you guys. I have the 105 in my rookie draft. I have the 107 in my rookie draft. What should I do with it? We tackled picks 101 to 104 already. So today we're breaking down the ultimate draft strategy guide with each pick in your Dynasty rookie drafts. We're going to go through a lot of scenarios. Should you trade up? Should you trade down? Veteran trade targets you could go after. What to do if you actually keep the pick. Of course, that will change a lot post-draft, but going to be a lot of fun. We're not going to waste any time. Let's get right into it. All right, so if you skipped the intro, for each of these picks, 105 in Superflex, 105 in one quarterback, so on and so forth, all the way up to 108, we're going to be outlining each of the four main paths that you could take. What you do if you stick and pick, which I said in the intro, that's going to change a lot post-draft based on what happens. Number two is kind of trade up scenarios, which you might be exploring right now. Trade down scenarios if you're like a long-term rebuild, took over an orphan type of situation. And of course, also if you're a contender and you happen to luck into one of these picks, or you're, a house money contender and you need a veteran trade target to push you over the edge, we'll discuss some of those as well. And then the ultimate verdict on what path we would take in each given situation that we're in. So let's start with pick 105. In Superflex leagues, which is primarily what we play in, but we will cover one quarterback as well. If you keep the pick, the best course of action is kind of just take whoever falls to you between Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Malik Neighbors, depending on your team needs, depending on, which prospect you value higher. You're going to have one of those guys on the board for you because we presume Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison to go pretty high in your rookie draft. So yeah, if you're going to keep the pick, that's pretty much the course of action that we would take right now. I don't imagine that'll change much post-draft, but it definitely could.
Yeah, the reason why it probably won't change much post-draft is simply like we outlined in the last video, that the market kind of views Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison a step above the rest. And then this 3 to 5 range is kind of viewed above the 106, 107, 108 on, like we'll get into in a second. So the 105 in terms of valuation is closer to the 103 and the 104 than the 106 is the 105, in my opinion, based on the current market value. And we'll get into some of the reasons why. We'll get into the potential tier that you can find yourself at 105 when we go to the options of making the pick. But if you have 105 in a Superflex league, this is the best time.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking to trade up, because I think some people, maybe they're not as high on Drake May, maybe they're not as high on Jaden Daniels, and they want Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr., I think it would probably cost you about a late first rounder this year or next year to move up to 101 or 102 to make sure that you can get one of Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison. It potentially would cost you more than that, knowing the hype around those prospects. But if you have, a million picks and you just happen to have a really good roster already and you're okay giving up 105, 110, a second next year, and like maybe a young player or something to make sure you get Marvin, to make sure you get Caleb Williams, I think that's fine. I think I'm okay doing that. That would be one of the trade up scenarios I would think of. Generally speaking, though, I'm probably not really looking to trade up from this pick because I do think, you're in a spot where you're going to get whatever guy falls to you. It's not really a big deal. When it comes to trading down, I would say selling the pick, especially if it's, a quarterback. Like if you're on the board at 105 and you don't need a quarterback, you have a loaded quarterback core already, and Jaden Daniels is there or Drake May is there for somebody, you should be able to get a pretty good return if you were to sell one of those last top 3 quarterbacks. It could be quite beneficial to your team to do that. Say you're fine with, Odunze or Bowers, whoever falls to you at 106, 107, and the guy that's picking there really needs a quarterback. You could probably net maybe even a future first, if not a bunch of second rounders, or maybe a late first in this year's class to move down, a spot or two for one of your league mates to secure a falling quarterback. Or maybe you don't view a huge difference between Neighbors if he's there at 105 for you and the rest of the wide receivers in this class, and you are okay moving all the way down to like 109, 110 area to get a future first for your 105, and you can pocket like Brian Thomas in a future first.
Yeah, I mean, the process here obviously is using the quarterback equity or the Malik Neighbors equity, given that there's kind of a view of Malik Neighbors being above the rest of the wide receiver core sans Marvin Harrison. Using that piece where if you need extra assets and you want to, let's say, like you mentioned, move down to the 109, pocket a 2025 first, those opportunities are going to arise because, again, with how highly regarded Drake May / Jaden Daniels are in this class and how highly regarded Malik Neighbors is in this class, I mean, you're talking about guys that for the most part, are going to find their way inside the top 25 of startup value. So make sure if you are trading down from this pick, you are valuing it as such. If you had a top 25 pick in a Superflex startup draft, think of that as the equivalent value to what you should be looking for when you're trading down from the 105.
Yeah, and I farmed out all of these picks to you guys. Some of the trades that you guys have made. Recently, Stoic Dynasty FF made a trade where he traded down from 105 and he gave up a 2025 second and Brian Robinson in addition to it to get Devontae Smith, the 110, and a 2026 third. Now, I will say maybe you wanted some more higher end assets for a trade like this, but at the same time, if you don't view, say, Malik Neighbors and the rest of the wide receiver class all that differently, you can pocket a Devontae Smith and still get, Worthy, Lad McConkey, Brian Thomas there at 110. So again, it's really all going to depend on your own individual valuation. I would say I would have maybe wanted a little bit more than this, but I do think this is a half decent return. You pocket a top 15 dynasty wide receiver in Devontae Smith, and you get a pretty similarly valued 110, assuming you're not super high on the 105, whatever player you expect to be there.
Find a deal that you're comfortable with and use market value to your advantage, basically, is the precipice. If you are not sold on the 105, or if you maybe don't need a quarterback and a quarterback is what's left on the board, definitely exercise your options, because like you can see, you can make some pretty decent packages that come back your way.
Yeah, and then selling the pick outright for a veteran is also a path that you could explore. Maybe your wide receiver core is loaded and you can sell the 105 straight for one of the top 3 running backs in Dynasty, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs. I would feel comfortable doing that because I think, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, whatever one of those guys falls is pretty much on par in terms of equivalent value to those running backs. And if your team is in a situation, maybe you're a house money team, you're trying to win, that would make some sense. Maybe you want to buy low on like an AJ Brown or a Puka Nacua or even a veteran quarterback. Maybe it's 105 plus, gets you Kyler Murray or Trevor Lawrence, or maybe you can get Sam Laporta plus for the 105 if you need a tight end. Those all could make some sense. A deal that Eric here made, he sold Deshaun Watson in the 105 and got all the way up to Jalen Hurts. Again, that's an offloading a risky quarterback and a potentially other risky quarterback if you were to take Jaden Daniels in that spot or Drake May in that spot. And you're like, you know what, screw it. I'm a really good team. I'm ready to compete here. Just give me Jalen Hurts. He's going to give me high end value.
Yeah, this is the perfect type of deal you do. You take the 105, a very high price, a very marketable asset on this current market, and Jalen Hurts, a guy who's kind of falling in the graces of circles, obviously finished the year bad. If you could target that type of buy low, get off a guy like Deshaun Watson and use the 105 to leverage up from Deshaun to Jalen Hurts, that's a very, very smart deal that Eric was able to make.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of like the overall verdict with what we would do if you guys have the 105 in a Superflex league, as we talked about last video, do your due diligence. But in most team situations at 105, I'm pretty comfortable just sticking and picking whatever player falls to me there because I value Drake May and Malik Neighbors specifically, but even Jaden Daniels too. I think he's going to retain his value pretty well. So if you're in a rebuilding situation or a house money situation, I'm pretty much just going to take whoever falls there. But of course, I'm going to do my due diligence, see what it costs to trade up, see what it costs to trade down. And if you guys are contenders, I actually do like the idea of selling this pick for that elite end running back talent. If you guys are already in a very good situation and you just happen to luck into the 105, maybe you already have one of those running backs. You have Bijan already, and you're like, I'm just going to go trade this for Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm going to be ready to compete one of the best teams in my league. I don't think that's a terrible idea. Or going after a mid-wide receiver one like Chris Olave or AJ Brown or Puka Nacua also makes some sense. But generally speaking, in most team situations, I'm very comfortable at 105 just sticking and picking. Let's pivot to the 105 from a one quarterback perspective. Obviously, this changes everything because we don't have Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels that are going to factor into this pick. So you're looking right now, if you keep the pick, at whoever your wide receiver 4 is. For me, that's Xavier Worthy. For you, that's Brian Thomas Jr., assuming Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison are off the board, as well as Brock Bowers in any kind of tight end premium. But of course, if it's not a tight end premium, maybe Bowers is available at this pick. I think if you're keeping the pick, you're probably looking at your wide receiver 4, whoever it ends up being. I think it's a little early for a running back. I think it's a little early for one of the quarterbacks in a one quarterback format as well. So for me, I think I'm just comfortable taking my wide receiver 4.
Yeah, and we'll get into maybe the spots where the running backs may come off the board later in the series who knows, maybe later in this video. But at this spot, like you said, 105 in a one quarterback league, it's going to be a wide receiver, or if you have a pressing need at quarterback, I think Caleb Williams is well within this tier. So I like how you outlined that.
Yeah, for sure. So when we're talking about trade up scenarios with the 105 in a one quarterback format, I would heavily consider trading up from this pick if you guys have it, because the 101 to 103 is kind of the money pot in terms of, Marvin and Malik Neighbors and even Rome Odunze as well. And if you're in need of a tight end, Brock Bowers too. So especially if it's the wide receiver position that you're targeting with this pick, I feel comfortable in saying that those top 3 guys are a tier ahead of the rest of the wide receiver class. So for me, if you're looking to target a wide receiver with this pick, see what it costs you to get up from 105 Xavier Worthy, 105 Brian Thomas, to the 103 to get Rome Odunze, to the 102 to get Malik Neighbors. Maybe all it costs you is the 105 plus the 111 gets you the 103 plus a 2025 second or something like that. I think that's a very reasonable deal that you can make when securing one of these guys. I wouldn't go trade up for one of these top receivers unless you're in a house money contender situation or you lucked into the 105 and you're a heavy contender. If you're a rebuilder, if you're kind of taking over an orphan or whatever, you're probably better off holding your assets and collecting picks and trading down rather than trading up. But again, the price is always right for any team situation. If all it costs you to go from 105 to 103 is a 2025 second, obviously I'm doing that.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that applies obviously to both one quarterback and Superflex leagues. Like you kind of said at the 105, if you know that there's a big four, if you, let's just say it's Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and of course, Brock Bowers. If you know that inherently and the 105 is the start of the tier break, which we both believe that to be the case, if the cost, like you said, is very cheap to move up from 105 to 104, because people are just looking at, oh, I have the 104, the 105 to the 104 shouldn't cost that much to move up. If they're under that mindset, then you could take advantage of some value.
Yeah, absolutely. And conversely, if you're in a trade down situation from the 105, because I do think this is a very good spot to trade down from as well, because let's say Brock Bowers falls and it's a tight end premium league and somebody needs a tight end, you might be able to get a pretty decent set of value for this. Or maybe Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr. goes to like a nuts landing spot and they go
Top
ahead
10.
of Rome Odunze, which I don't think is an outrageous scenario either. Maybe he's available. Or maybe you just view this wide receiver class as a huge flat tier after those top three guys. And you're like, I'm cool going down to 109. I'm cool going down to 110 and getting the back end of this tier, the Troy Franklin, the Ladd McConkey, whatever guy falls there. And I'll let somebody else come up and overpay for one of these other dudes because I don't view them any differently. So I would be very likely to trade down from this pick if you guys are in a situation where you're trying to collect assets, you're trying to collect draft picks, your team is far off from competing, you're looking at a 2025, 2026 type of window. For me, Xavier Worthy is worth this pick, and I know inherently that I might be able to get him later than this. I think I can get him at 107, 108. So for me, specifically, because I have Xavier Worthy ranked here, I'm okay moving down. For you, it might be a little bit tougher because you have Brian Thomas ranked here, and I think most people will agree that that's probably who should go here. So for me specifically, I'm definitely looking to trade down from this pick to that 106, 107, 108 range.
Yeah, and as much as I love Brian Thomas, for the record, like I'm always going to be doing my due diligence. That was the common theme of last video. Do your due diligence, because you never know what type of deals can materialize if you just, peck in the right direction, right? With Brian Thomas, as much as I love him as my wide receiver 4, there's a bigger difference between him and Rome Odunze than Brian Thomas to the rest of the wide receivers. So if I can get extra value to move down and still get a guy I really like A.D. Mitchell or Ladd McConkey, like somebody like that, and I can move down to the 109, maybe pick up, an extra early second this year or an extra late first, pending the market that you're in, you have to go and explore those options.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we're doing this very hypothetically at this point in time. We're going to do this again post-draft with a lot more concrete information in terms of who we have ranked where, what guy we would stick and pick for, and also some of the better trade package ideas that you're going to have. But again, people have these picks now and want to know what to do with them, right? Do I move up? Do I move down? If you can get ahead of your league mates and predict this accurately, then it can be very profitable, which is why we're doing this this video now. And also too, the veteran market is a very exploitable thing right now because of the rookie hype season after the combine. So veteran trade targets that I would consider going after with the 105 and a 1 quarterback, this would also be an avenue I would really, really exhaust, especially if you lucked into this pick as a contender. Michael Pittman Jr. might re-sign with the Colts. T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, Jordan Addison, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. That's probably the range of wide receivers you're talking about. Maybe you can get up to Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill. I don't think you probably would be able to. It's probably more the guys that I just mentioned. And then at running back, I don't think you're going to get any of the top 3 guys, but if you can get Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, Devon Achane plus, Kyron Williams plus, something like that would make sense. And I think you should have your pick of the litter at tight end and quarterback, maybe minus Sam Laporta as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, this applies to all the rookie picks this year for the most part. But what we're really seeing is obviously the youth movement and Dynasty really taking an effect, causing these guys coming up to be valued so much higher in terms of startup drafts. There's never been a better time where if you are a contending team and you want to restock on young vets, like we're talking even like 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds vets, this is the perfect time to be able to do so, because DJ Moore, for example, might have costed you like the 103 2 years ago. But now, I mean, he could probably be had for the 108, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So the verdict here with the 105 and a 1 quarterback to me is be active with it, because I do
Yes.
think it is kind of a tier break. It's unfortunate you didn't get the 104, unfortunate you didn't get the 103. Unless you are a massive truther of whoever the consensus views at 105, maybe you just love you some Brian Thomas and you're just going to stick and pick him. That's fine. I would say definitely be shopping this pick ahead of time. Definitely see if you can get up, definitely see if you can get down if that's the team situation that you're in. I would probably be moving down and collecting assets if I'm a rebuilder of any kind, and moving up trading for studs if I'm a contender or a house money close to contender type of situation of any kind. So that's depending on your team situation, you're all going to have different needs. But if you have the 105, there's a good chance that you're rebuilding. And I would say, generally speaking, I would probably trade down in that scenario. So let's move on to the 106 here. The Superflex options at the 106. Keep the pick. I mean, that's the first one. If we keep the pick right now, for me, that is Romo Dunze. That's who I have ranked there. But
Same.
Brock Bowers and even JJ McCarthy would potentially be in consideration for me, depending on where these guys all get drafted, what landing spots they go to, as well as your team needs. Because if you're a quarterback needy team at 106 and JJ McCarthy goes first round of the Minnesota Vikings, and you're like, you know what, I can't get up to Jaden Daniels, I can't get up to Drake May, then I'd be okay spending the 106 on JJ McCarthy in that situation. But generally speaking, most teams, I would say Romo Dunze is the best option.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Romo Dunze is currently my 6th overall ranked player in Superflex leagues. He's going to be a top 10 pick. We've already gone over his prospect profile. He is absolute dynamite. And like I just mentioned with Brian Thomas, Romo Dunze is closer to Malik Neighbors than any other wide receiver in this class is to Romo Dunze. Do not get it twisted. Some people will express this narrative in the other direction. Romo Dunze's got the goods. So I do think he is the clear wide receiver option in a Superflex if you're going to go with this pick. And like you said, with Brock Bowers, what he represents, tight end premium, potentially ascending to the number 1 spot overall in Dynasty. And I mean, if JJ McCarthy goes top 10, he's instantly going to be valued inside of the top 15 quarterbacks. So the reason why I want to outline this is the 106 is really a decision point. Like I mentioned just in a second ago, where the 101 and the 102, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison kind of viewed as a mini tier on their own. 103 to 105 kind of viewing as, top 25 Superflex assets, a tier on their own. 106 to 108, man, like there's a lot more widespread narrative between these guys. These are the 3 guys that we feel comfortable taking, but you're going to see a lot more variety in this range than you will 103 to 105, or obviously 101, 102. So depending on if a team needs a quarterback, or if it doesn't have a tight end, or maybe it's a competitive team and wants to add another wide receiver, like any of these guys can go respectively in the 106 spot, which makes it fascinating because, as we'll get into in a second, there's a lot of potential trades you can make.
Yeah, and if you're looking to trade up, I think similar to the 105, you're probably looking to get up for a quarterback, I would imagine, or maybe for Marvin Harrison Jr. It's probably because you need that option on your team, or maybe you just love that prospect. So I think it's worth your time to see how much it would cost you to go from 106 to 103, or 106 to 102, or whatever guy you're targeting, because maybe all it costs you, because it never hurts to ask, is 106, 206 in a future second, and you just secured the 103 and you're guaranteed one of Caleb Williams, Drake Mayer, Marvin Harrison Jr. It's like, why would you not do that? Because regardless of your team situation, that's a great deal for the 103, because you just got up from, say, a 3rd or a 4th round startup pick to a back end 1st, early 2nd round startup pick. So if you can do that, definitely explore it. It might not be on the table for you. This is what it may cost you to go secure Drake or Marvin Harrison at 103 if you want to get up. Somebody in our audience put out here 106, 109, and 301 for 103. I think that's probably about a fair deal. If you're not super stoked about Romo Dunze, if you're not super stoked on the tier 2 wide receivers in this class, and you're like, screw it, I need a quarterback, I need Drake Mayer, I need Marvin, this makes sense.
Yeah, I think this is a very fair deal, especially if you're trying to consolidate, going up, getting your young quarterback or Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, Marvin goes 102, Drake May. If Drake May goes 102, then Marvin Harrison Jr. Having to part with the 109, yes, the 109 in this draft class obviously is a big time asset, but to consolidate for a high priced, top 20 overall asset, it's going to cost you a penny. And like we kind of mentioned, 106 is kind of viewed as the tier break off of the top 5. So I'm fine with paying this if you have the assets to be able to make this type of package.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking like a late 3rd, early 4th round startup pick in Romo Dunze for like and plus a 5th or a 6th or a 7th round startup pick in the 109 for a guy that's probably a top 25, top 20 asset, top 15 asset potentially if you end up getting Marvin or Drake there. So yeah, that definitely makes some sense. In terms of trade down scenarios, again, during rookie drafts, people are going to get panicky. So even though the 106 isn't really like a fulcrum great pick where we view it, 103, 102 and those kind of picks now, it could still be a great pick to sell. if somebody really loves Odunze, or if one of those top 5 guys slides, or if they really need Bowers and a tight end premium or something like that, or if JJ McCarthy is the last quarterback available who went in the first round and they're like, I need to leave this rookie draft with a quarterback. I have the 108 and I don't think I'm going to get him there because the guy with 107 also needs a quarterback, for example. Maybe you can sell off the 106 in that scenario, but generally speaking, I think the interest in terms of trade down scenarios for 106 will be lackluster relative to the previous 5 picks that we've talked about so far. But I do think one of the things that really stands out to me at 106 is that you should be able to sell 106 for veterans. And one of the packages that you guys can see here, it looks like Kurt sold off the 106 and the 204. He got 109, Saquon Barkley, and Dontavian Wicks. I mean, the difference between 106 and 109 is not huge, especially if you're not huge on Rome Odunze or something like that. Saquon Barkley is a very solid back-end RB1 asset. Dontavian Wicks, probably not worth quite as much as the 204, but I do think it's a pretty decent dart throw, late second round guy to go after. So I think this is like a good structured trade when it comes to trading down from the 106, still securing a first round asset and getting a couple guys to help your roster.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously the micros are going to differ depending on how you view certain players, whether that's Saquon Barkley, whether that, I mean, maybe it's a different package. You do it with Kyron Williams, maybe a different package you do it with Devon Achane. Regardless, though, if you're a contending team, you have the 106 and you can maybe get a running back on the market, knowing inherently that this class isn't going to net you a lot that go in the top 3 rounds of the NFL draft. Being proactive in that regard, understanding where exactly the market aligns is going to get you some deals pending the player that you want to target. So I like that. If you need a running back, especially as a contender, I would do it in the veteran trade market rather than just pushing the rookie running back 1 up to the 106 pick.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think a lot of people would have probably structured their team in a way that they have a huge foundation of quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends to this point, and they were aiming 2024 to be the class to get their running back position. And unfortunately, these guys didn't really pan out. They're not as valuable as we thought they were going to be. A lot of them actually went back to school. So maybe trading for a veteran is the situation that you guys are in. Maybe you can get Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, or Kyron Williams, Devon Achane plus or something like that. Or, you know, you might be in a situation you're going after wide receivers too. Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, all probably relatively valued around this pick. Or if you need another quarterback and you don't love JJ McCarthy, you could go after Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy. Or if you're a big Justin Fields or Tua Tagovailoa believer, I'd probably want a plus on top of those guys. But Prescott and Purdy specifically makes some sense for this 106 pick if you don't want to just spend the pick on JJ.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, I mean, especially from a contending standpoint, you mentioned contender, maybe, I don't know, a couple years ago when you're a rebuilder, you sold off, you know, a Mike Evans or somebody, and somebody gave you their 2024 first. That team obviously gets older. Now you're pocketing the 106. Well, if you need a quarterback, like you said, instead of having to take the risk of a profile like JJ McCarthy, where, yes, he's going to go top 10, but you don't necessarily know, is he going to start right away? What's the production in fantasy going to be? Like you mentioned, a guy like Dak Prescott, who's coming off a top 5 season. Yes, he's a little bit on the older side, being 30 years old, but attached to a great offense, great real life quarterback, you may be able to net a deal like that, even if you have to add like a second round pick to get it done. Taking the asset of JJ and the potential value accumulation he has and pocketing the points that Dak Prescott has if you're a contender would be the site that you want to, or would be the path that you want to explore pretty much.
Yeah, and I would say if you have any specific questions to your team, leave them down below. The ultimate verdict here with the 106 and a Superflex is, since this pick is a mini tier break for us, right? Like we said, 103 to 105 is kind of where the tiers break off unless one of these guys fell to you. Contenders, I think, would be wise to see what they can get on the open veteran market in a trade up situation or just straight up for a top option on the veteran market. I do think, too, rebuilders might be wise to see what they can get in a trade down, especially if McCarthy gets a great landing spot and falls to you, or maybe Odunze gets a great landing spot, or Bowers goes to the Chargers or something like that. But in either case, Rome Odunze / Brock Bowers, or the off chance of one of May, Neighbors, or Daniels falling to you, is a fine option just to stick and pick here at 106. I like the nice thing about this rookie class and these videos that we're doing is that you're going to get a really good player if you just stick and pick. We're just exploring the options if you trade down, if you trade up, if you trade for a veteran or something like that. So let's take a look here at the one quarterback options here at 106. Again, we'll try and breeze through these a little bit easier because, again, we're going through the same format. What do you do if you keep the pick? What do you do if you trade up? What do you do if you trade down? What do you do if you trade for a veteran? So if you keep the pick right now for me at 106 in a one quarterback league is Worthy or Brian Thomas Jr., whichever one falls to you. Whichever tier 2 wide receiver you like is also fine. If you prefer Lad McConkey to Xavier Worthy, or AD Mitchell to Xavier Worthy, or Troy Franklin to Xavier Worthy, I think RB1 would also factor in, or start to factor in here, if they got a really, really good draft capital and landing spot. Let's say Jonathan Brooks goes top 50 in the draft to the Houston Texans or something. You could talk me into it here at 106. I still think it's a smidge early. Same goes with the quarterback position in one quarterback leagues. I think it's a smidge early for Caleb Williams, but I do think you could potentially talk me into that if you really needed a quarterback and were set at wide receiver. I think I'd be okay with it, but I would consider trading down at that point in time. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on keeping the pick here at 106? Do you think it's just go with the tier 2 wide receiver no matter what, or are you okay deviating for a running back or a quarterback if you needed one?
I'm more than comfortable deviating, to be fair. So as it currently stands in my single quarterback rankings, so we already mentioned the top 5. Brian Thomas would be my 5, like you said as well. Let's just say the top 5 goes in order: Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Brock Bowers, Roma Dunze, and then Brian Thomas. My next tier of like 6 to 8 would be Caleb Williams being my number 6 overall player. I do value him here. I do think that he can ascend to a tier 1 level quarterback, which I'm more than comfortable spending a mid first round pick on. And then after that, like you said, I'm fine deviating to the running back position. Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, obviously being the main guys. Not necessarily something I would value as of today, because if they go round 4, round 5, which again seems very unlikely, because I think the NFL will view these guys as the clear top 2 running backs in this class, I think they will be day 2 picks. But in the off scenario, one of them goes outside of day 2, protecting your asset. If you have to make the pick today, I would go towards a wide receiver. But like you said, if we're expecting day 2 capital, I would go towards the running backs. And I do think in the single quarterbacks, especially, running back value is inflated a little bit higher than it is in Superflex.
Yeah, and of course, make any adjustments you need to based on your own team situation and league settings. If you need a lot of wide receivers, this is a great class to have the 106 in, because you're going to have a lot of options at wide receiver. So trade up scenario, in a one quarterback league, I think getting a top 4 asset is pretty crucial. Knowing that what we know about these guys, if that's what you're looking to do and you have the capital to spare, you could do something like this with what Eric does here. He trades away the 106 and the 109 for the 102. So you secure Malik Nabers essentially, and you give up the 106. Like I said, right now I have Brian Thomas rated there. It could be Lad McConkey or Xavier Worthy. And then the 109, again, you're talking Troy Franklin or maybe RB1 or maybe QB2 off the board or something like that. I think that's worthwhile to do, especially considering he specifically says I have 108 and 110 already. Go up and secure Malik Nabers, especially if you're in a situation where, you're ready to turn your team over to a contender. You want the stud asset. Trading up in general in rookie drafts, that's usually the situation I want to be in. I want to be a contender or almost be a contender already.
Yeah. No, I agree. And especially in one quarterback. Now, Superflex, I'm more willing to trade down because there's more areas where I can accumulate a ton of value, especially hitting on a quarterback. So I'm more willing to trade down in the Superflex league. But in a one quarterback, knowing that there's really a select few of guys that see such value appreciation, going out and securing and consolidating your assets to a guy, Malik Nabers, who, quite frankly, I mean, if Malik Nabers hits, he can be valued as a top 4, top 5 overall asset in the one quarterback landscape. Whereas I have a hard time seeing 106 or 109 really ascending to that type of spot. So I'm always willing to consolidate in a one quarterback league because, again, like I said, there's a very select few of people that can reach the top 5 overall of a startup draft.
Yeah, for sure. A consolidation in one quarterbacks is really, really crucial, especially if it's like a shallow league too. It's like a start 8 or a start 9 or something like that. In trade down scenarios, I mean, like you just kind of alluded to, you don't really have as much value accumulation potential in a one quarterback league because the studs go higher. If you were to trade off of 106, it's not really an elite spot where somebody's trading up specifically for someone. We won't know that until post draft. Let's say, 2 or 3 of these wide receivers get really good landing spots. That's possible that 106 becomes a very valuable pick for that reason. But as of now, when we're recording this in March, you have no idea where Worthy and Thomas and all these guys are going. So we don't really know if 106 is going to be a valuable pick or not. It could be a fulcrum and a tier break for a lot of people post draft, but we have no idea at this point in time. So those tier 2 wide receivers, maybe the top running back, maybe Caleb Williams, if you don't mind moving down and securing 109 plus, like the trade that this guy made from 102, if you're in a position where you don't mind getting that depth, again, I would prefer the 102 in that side of it. If they added another second rounder or another, young asset to that deal, I think it's probably a little bit more fair. If you're fine making a move like that, I don't mind it. But for me, I think at 106, I'd probably just hold this pick. If you guys have a one quarterback 106 and you want to trade down from it, I would say wait until after the rookie draft to do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Especially once people see the landing spots, they see AD in Buffalo, they see Brian Thomas in Jacksonville. Like, there's going to be a lot more buzz on your 106 post draft once we see how many players end up going in the first round, both at wide receiver, quarterback, and potentially on day 2 with running back, than they will right now. Because, I mean, as soon as, like I said, people see the Chiefs receiver, the Bills receiver, maybe the Cowboys receiver, maybe the Jaguars, Cincinnati Bengals receiver, they're much more willing to convince themselves of the high-end scenario of what they can reach in those spots.
Yeah, and if you're trading it for a veteran, the guys that I would go after, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Drake London, Jalen Waddle tier of wide receivers,
Yep.
ETN, JT, Achan, Kyron tier of running backs, and then again, the top of the quarterback and tight end board. But the final verdict here with the 106 and a one quarterback league is if you're a contender, I would say I'm very likely to trade this pick post draft, not right now, post draft, because if you're trying to contend, I think you'll be able to get a really good asset for a very, talent rich wide receiver core. If you want to just trade this pick straight for Tyreek Hill and try and win a championship, I think it makes some sense at that point in time. But right now, I would say you're probably better off holding. So let's move on to the 107 here, and we'll try again to speed this up a little bit. Superflex options at the 107. Again, keep the pick. If you're keeping the pick, you're left with whatever falls to you between Bowers, Odunze, maybe JJ McCarthy if he gets that good draft capital and landing spot like we seem to be projecting now. That top 7 tier or top 8 tier with McCarthy is one that's pretty valuable. So it should be a pretty valuable pick that you have there at 107. The trade up scenarios for 107, I think one of the common ones that you guys will think is, if you're at 107 and you're worried that Bowers is the guy that falls to you and you already have very good tight ends, I think that's going to be a very common thing in a lot of leagues because the tight end landscape in Dynasty is a lot better than it used to be. So I think Bowers is losing a little bit of value as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you can send just a second round pick to make sure you get to 105 or 106 to secure Malik Neighbors or Romo Dunze, that's a no-brainer in my opinion.
I love that take, man. Like, because straight up, like people I've seen across leagues, even in 0.5 full point super flex tight end premium leagues, that unless you're Sam Laporta, unless you're Trey McBride, which I think Brock Bowers is going to profile closer to those guys and the rest of the tight end landscape anyways, but people are really hesitant to try and acquire tight ends. And even if you have a core of, let's just say your 2 tight ends on your roster right now are Michael Mayer and Jake Ferguson, and you have the 107 and Brock Bowers is staring you at the face. Like, yeah, technically you could just take Brock Bowers and not have to worry about tight end, but a lot of people are just going to feel content. Like, I have Mayer, I have Ferguson. Like, I can scrap points at my tight end position. Can I go and take this highly priced 107 asset in this class and see if I can work up at quarterback, see if I can work up at wide receiver, see if I can trade the 107 straight up for any running back, sans Gibbs, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson in Dynasty. Like, can 107 plus a little piece get you McCaffrey if you're a contending team? I feel like in a lot of leagues, especially with how old McCaffrey is, that may be attainable, especially in more analyst type of centered leagues.
Yeah, it's like, why take the risk on a tight end prospect who, tight ends don't usually hit at the super highest, right? This is the best tight end prospect we've seen, but at the same time, people still see that TE next to his name and they're going to have bias towards him. So other than that scenario, again, I'm likely to trade down from 107 if possible. Like, I think it's actually a really good option to trade down from. But again, if Joe Dat's trade here is any indication of what you can do, 107 plus the 303 to get up to 105, like, do this instantly. Even if this was 203, I think I would have been totally fine with this.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I mean, 203, obviously a lot more conversation then because you might hit the end of the tier at wide receiver or one of the 3 running backs first off the board. But I mean, at this point, I just mentioned that 105 I view as a slight tier above the 106 to 108 range, and the 101, 102 slight tier above the 103 to 105. So if you can work up each of those tiers costing less than a first round pick, I'm all for it. Like you said, the 203 I'd be willing to give. I think the max would probably be about, what would you say, the 111, the 112? Like, would you give the 107 plus the 112 to go up and get the 105 if you needed a quarterback?
I would maybe want a second next year in return, but yeah, I think I'd be okay doing it still. So again, work the board definitely, because 107 is kind of a pivot point still as of right now. And I think this is one of those picks that you can do some projecting with pre-draft. Whereas, like I said, with 106, I think you're better off just holding it until post-draft. But with 107, because it's kind of a fulcrum guaranteed, even if McCarthy doesn't go high or do a good landing spot, you know that Odunze and Bowers should be able to hold their value post-draft. I think it's one of those picks that I'm actually willing to be very active with. Trade down scenarios, like I said, similar spot. If Bowers does have value in your league because somebody needs a tight end, he should be on the board in most formats, I would imagine. And you could maybe pivot off of him. I think a lot of leagues, like I said, due to how strong tight end is, you might not be able to get the haul that you're getting for 107 unless it's for JJ McCarthy, unless it's for a quarterback. So for me, if you can slide down and pick up a future second and you're big on, Ty Chandler like this guy did, I don't think this is a horrible trade. I probably would have waited till post draft to do this, to be honest. Where you get 107, you send off your 107, you get 109, a second rounder, and Ty Chandler. Again, if you're big on Ty Chandler, I think this is a fine move, but I think you may have been wise to hold on to this. But if you're not an Odunze guy, if you already have a loaded tight end core, I understand this trade.
Yeah, for sure. Like maybe if you subbed out Ty Chandler for an extra second round pick, I'm cool with making it now. But like you said, I feel like 109 plus 2 seconds is probably going to be the common type of deal that we see post draft. So why not wait till post draft? Because I mean, you may or may not have just got yourself out of getting an extra second here.
Yeah, but who knows? If 109 ends up being a fulcrum tier break, it was last year, if you recall. Like Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston was 108, 109, and 109 was the picks that people were trying to go after. If, let's say, Xavier Worthy gets a really good landing spot and JJ goes in round 1, and then the rest of the wide receiver landing spots taper off a little bit, then 109 might be a point where people are like, I'm going to get guaranteed Odunze, Bowers, JJ McCarthy, or the Kansas City Chiefs' new wide receiver, Xavier Worthy. Then people would be willing to go up for 109. So that would look like a sharp trade in retrospect. But for me, I think I'm okay holding 107 for now, unless I can get a better offer than the one that you ended up getting. So since 107 is also, could be Rome Odunze, I think you're likely to get in that area of the wide receiver rankings if you traded this for a veteran. Rashee Rice, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Jordan Addison, T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman Jr. You should be able to get somebody like that if you're a contender and you just want another wide receiver to help you win. Running back might be a little bit tougher because JT or ETN might be out of your range. I don't think I'd be comfortable sending the 107 for Achane or Kyron Williams. I think I would want something back in return, and I definitely wouldn't be comfortable doing it if all you can get is like Rashad White or Kenneth Walker or Saquon Barkley or Josh Jacobs or something like that. So for me, if you're looking for a running back with 107, it might be a little bit tougher unless you can get up like 107 plus something can get you up to that top tier or to McCaffrey. I think it would be kind of difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe at the 107 spot, let's just say Brock Bowers went 106 and you have a ton of wide receivers and you do need a tight end. I mean, you could also navigate towards potentially getting a set it and forget it guy like we see here with this trade for Sam Laporta.
Yeah, or Mark Andrews potentially straight up for the 107 makes sense. So, I mean, the final verdict here on the Superflex 107, it's a great pick. If you need a wide receiver or tight end and you're kind of indifferent towards like what you get there, I think it's a great pick to just hold post draft, but I see a lot of people undervaluing tight ends. So I would say if you don't need Brock Bowers and you notice nobody else in front of you in the rookie draft needs Brock Bowers, like for example, I have the 107 in our Tone Setters league and nobody else needs a tight end and it's difficult to trade tight ends in that league.
Yeah.
It looks like, even though I already have George Kittle, Brock Bowers is going to be the best available player for me unless I go in a direction with JJ McCarthy. So get some intel on your league mates. If you think that you might be looking at best player available Brock Bowers and you already have a good tight end in place or a great tight end core, it might be worth shopping that pick for a veteran wide receiver because I'm a contender in that league. I might be looking to just shop, hey, I'm just going to move off of 107 because I don't think Odunze is going to be there. And I'm just going to go after whoever. I'm going to go after DJ Moore. I'm going to go after Michael Pittman. I'm going to go after T. Higgins or something like that. That's kind of the direction that I'm leaning towards with my 107, just to give you guys an insight for it. I think the best course of action is to go after a hammer with that pick if you expect Odunze not to be there. But if you think Odunze might be there, then I do think it's okay to hold on to it. So 107 in a one quarterback league. Again, keep the pick. For me, you talked about this with 106. I actually have Caleb Williams as my 107. So for me, if you do need a quarterback, I do think Caleb Williams, this is the point in the draft that I'm okay taking him in a one quarterback league. And then after Worthy and Brian Thomas are off the board, I feel confident venturing for a quarterback if you needed one. But also, if you wanted to stick and pick a wide receiver at this point in time and Worthy and Brian Thomas are off the board, I think it's okay to take Vlad McConkey here. I think it's okay to take Troy Franklin or A.D. Mitchell here, but this is probably one of those areas where I'd be looking to trade down if that's what the board looked like. Depending on landing spot and draft capital, again, I think I would be okay with Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks or somebody like that. They become conversations if they get second round draft capital of the Cowboys or something like that. This one's really too hard to decipher pre-draft. There's so much that could change, so much going on here. This is definitely one that I would hold until post-draft.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll notice a common theme, especially in a one quarterback league once you get to the mid to late first round in a one quarterback, like we know kind of what's going to happen in the first 5 overall picks, like 106, 107 on, man, like we're not going to concretely know what exactly your draft room is going to be valuing until after the rookie draft. Cause like you said, The Chiefs wide receiver may vault all the way up to the 104. The Bills wide receiver may vault all the way up to the 105. Like, we really don't know what exactly could happen, because I feel like the market's more influenced in one quarterback leagues not having the quarterback equity than it is in a super flex league. So at this point, like you said, play it by ear. I definitely would not want to move these picks pre-draft, because we ultimately don't know just how high the value could be post-draft.
Yeah, I think if you were to move this 107 pick pre-draft, you'd probably be doing it to go up rather than down. You'd probably be trying to get up to 101 or 104. Definitely an avenue you could exhaust. I think it's going to cost you a fair amount. I think it's going to cost you 107 plus 109 or something like that to get up to the 103 or the 102 or something. So I would maybe kind of wait and see how the draft is progressing, because I do think the one quarterback 109 is going to have value. It's going to be a guy that went top, first round draft capital wide receiver to a decent landing spot, or second round draft capital running back to a decent landing spot, or quarterback one or something like that. It's going to have value. It's just difficult to decipher how much value. So if you can just mitigate that risk altogether and go up to 103 or 102 or 104 or something, that definitely makes some sense. If you're looking to trade down, it makes sense to do that as well, because if you can trade down, let's say you don't see a difference between the 107 in a one quarterback league right now and the 111 or the 112 in a one quarterback league right now, you're fine with whatever cluster of quarterback, wide receiver, and running back are available to you. And you can get 109 and 202 to move down from 107 right now. It's on the table for you as an offer. I would be okay doing that right now in a one quarterback league, because there's so much up in the air, and it's not like 107 is a tier break in one quarterback formats.
Yeah, no, I agree with that rationale. And I think you summarized it pretty well. Like, just be liquid, see kind of what happens, like what type of offers you get. But typically, unless there's an offer that blows me away, I'm pretty hesitant to move it personally at this point.
Yeah, and again, you can also trade it for a veteran if that's the direction that your roster is headed. You're just a full status contender, and you're fine just giving it up for Deebo Samuel or Devontae Adams or George Pickens or Saquon Barkley or Stephon Diggs or something. Should be an easy acquisition for you with 107. And of course, the guys that we've talked about veteran-wise already, if you can get up to them, even better. But for the most part, I think this is about the range that the 107 will net you. The verdict here is it's not a great spot to stick and pick as of right now, but you also don't have enough information to move it comfortably. Unless you're moving up, I would say I'm leaning towards trading up. Unless you're a productive struggle, I probably wouldn't trade down ahead of the draft. I would say your best course of action here is just hold and see what happens with the 107 and one quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, who knows too? Maybe a 107 post draft, somebody who really wants to get into this class, maybe a contending team wants to say, hey, I have two 2025 ones at my disposal. I can offer you for the 107. I mean, we're going to know, like you said, more post draft to see where guys land, where the market value kind of lands on those guys. But if you can trade this type of spot where we do view a tier break from the top four in a one quarterback league for extra capital plus in the future, that's definitely something I would navigate as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on to the 108 here in the Superflex frame of mind here. This is a good pick to keep, I would say, because at first we were talking about, okay, the top 7 is the tier that you need. Now, with JJ McCarthy looking like he's going to be a top 12 pick or a top 15 pick, I'm assuming that the top 8 is going to end up being the fulcrum that you want to stick to, especially right now when JJ is getting that buzz and Jaden Daniels is getting that, are getting that buzz. So for me, it is really just whoever falls to you at 108 right now. If it's JJ McCarthy, that's fine. You can sell the pick for a quarterback needy team or take the quarterback yourself. If Odunze or Brock Bowers fell to you, that would also make some sense. Or potentially, if we get a really good landing spot for Xavier Worthy, we get a really good landing spot for Brian Thomas or Ladd McConkey or even Troy Franklin, they would factor in here. I mean, like if Xavier Worthy goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, it's possible that he would go ahead of Brock Bowers in rookie drafts because of the tight end landscape. It's possible that he would go ahead of JJ McCarthy in rookie drafts if JJ goes to like the Raiders or something like that, for example.
I mean, we saw it a couple years ago when Sky Moore was going ahead of Chris Olave. Like, people are going to see the Chiefs landing spot, wide receiver, and prop the player up. And just for the record, when we're recording this early March, we're viewing it like you said, the 101, 102, the 103 to 105, the 106, 108 as the respective tiers, the 109 being the tier break. I mean, come post rookie draft, like you said, or post NFL draft, like you said, maybe that tier goes to the 109. Maybe that tier goes to the 110. Maybe that tier goes to the 111, depending on what some of those, high end contenders end up doing at the wide receiver position. I could see AD Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas. Like, a lot of these wide receivers could end up working into this tier. But as of when we're recording this, with the hype of JJ McCarthy, he now enters that top 7, therefore making it a top 8.
Yeah, for sure. Trade up scenarios. I personally, a lot of people are going to say, should I trade up here? Because the top 7 for so long was the tier that you wanted to get into. So I think a lot of people with the 108 are wondering, should they trade up right now? But part of me thinks that the 108 will be a very good honeypot for the top end
Oh, yeah.
landing spot wide receivers, for JJ McCarthy, like we talked about already. So I'm like, I would not trade up right now. If I had 108, I would
Absolutely
probably
not right
just
now.
hold. I think this is probably one of the firmest hold picks that I would say so far, because there's going to be more and more hype that gets added to this 108 pick. So for me, if you have this pick, I would probably just hold it. Trade down scenarios, again, I would just hold this pick. I would probably not trade down as of right now unless you get blown away by an offer. If somebody's willing to give you 110, 202 in their second next year, like that's one thing. That's maybe a trade that you would want to consider if you're a long-term productive struggle team. But for
Yeah.
the most part, I would probably just hold this post draft, because I think you're going to really get a haul for this pick if somebody needs a quarterback like JJ McCarthy, or if somebody wants the Buffalo Bills number 2 wide receiver, or the Kansas City Chiefs number 2 wide receiver going forward.
Yeah, and the beauty of having the 108 too, like you said, with JJ McCarthy now entering the fold, is that if you have multiple picks in the 106 to 108 range now you're more likely to be able to make a move up inside the top 4, inside the top 3. Let's just say the guy having the top or the 103 completely barren roster, needs a quarterback, maybe needs a high staple price wide receiver. Well, at that point, if 106 goes Brock Bowers and Romo Dunze's there at 107, JJ's there at 108, maybe that guy's now looking at the pick like, oh, I can still get my quarterback and add a guy like Roma Dunze, and you're now able to move up for a Marvin Harrison or for a Drake May in that instance. So this tier extending to 8 is really big for the people that have multiple first-round picks, being able to afford opportunities to consolidate their assets. That's what I would mention as well. So you mentioned trade-up scenarios. Necessarily would not be looking towards it at this point, but come NFL draft, if JJ McCarthy is viewed as a clear-cut tier above the rest of the first round, 109, 110, 111, 112, and you have a piece like Roma Dunze or a piece like Brock Bowers, if that guy has wide receivers, needs a tight end, then at that point it's like it's more capable, it's easier to be able to form a package that somebody would want to trade down from one of those top assets to.
Yeah, and I think trading for a veteran is the least likely thing I would do
Agreed.
for 108 right now, just given what the hype could be around this pick post draft.
Yeah.
Again, if you want to go after Nico Collins, you want to go after Tank Dell or Jordan Addison, T. Higgins, like that's the type of wide receiver I would be looking to get.
Yeah.
JT, ETN, that's the type of running back I'd be looking to get. But to me, this pick's going to be more valuable post draft. So I would wait till peak rookie hype season when people are actually literally on the clock with this 108 and they're like, I need another quarterback. I'll give you way more than just JT or ETN for the 108. I'll give you way more than just Jordan Addison for the 108. People are making trades for this deal. Like one of these trades here on Twitter was somebody going after a stud quarterback in Jordan Love. You trade off 108, Jackson Smith and Jigba, a lot of unnecessary risk there, and the 308, and you get Jordan Love. Again, so if you can make trades like this, that's fine. But I would only make a trade with the 108 right now that involved me going after a superstar asset or a really, really high-end rookie pick this year. I probably wouldn't be trying to get cute and being like, okay, my starting lineup is this. I need one more starting wide receiver to compete this year. It's like, dog, it's March. Like you have tons of time to do that. Don't trade for Nico Collins right now when you could probably get a better receiver than Nico Collins in 2 months.
It's all about this point in the dynasty life cycle where you're trying to acquire liquidity because, like Corey said, you don't have to field a roster that has to put up points. You don't need a wide receiver 3 right now. It is freaking March. What do you need that wide receiver 3 for? Like Corey said, if you can get high price consolidated assets for the cheap now, while people are thinking about, oh, I got to fill this position and fill that position and fill that position, taking advantage of that value and getting a liquid asset for 2 less liquid assets in this instance with JSN and 108. Very, very sharp move because like we mentioned, Jordan Love's going to be a player that is selected in the mid-second round of startups. Basically, your goal, if you're moving picks inside the top 8 of this rookie draft, is can I target a player that will be going within the top 20 of Superflex drafts, and can I get him at an affordable cost? Whether that's 95 cents at the on the dollar, 90 cents on the dollar. Can you get it less than sticker price at this point? Because like we kind of mentioned, with the rookie fever coming and with all the prospect hype we're seeing, I feel like this is the best chance that you can to be able to get some of these assets.
Yeah, and again, if you're consolidating like this, I'm assuming this guy's in a competitive situation where he's okay giving up the 108 in JSN because the rest of his wide receiver core is already strong.
Yeah.
Or, he just needs a very hammer-like QB2 for his team and he's ready to go compete. So again, the verdict of this is hold this pick. Do not feel pressured to move up until you get a feel for the landscape at 108, which won't be until post-draft like we've talked about already. So one quarterback options for 108, and then we will get out of here. Again, keep the pick. 108 in our rankings. It's so hard to say what it's going to be right
Yeah.
now. Right now, it's Ladd McConkey from a talent perspective. But again, quarterback 1 or quarterback 2 potentially would factor in. RB1 would factor in. Other wide receivers, depending on their draft capital and landing spot, would factor in. So again, it's totally irrelevant who we have 108 right now, but Ladd McConkey is the guy that I have rated there. Trade up scenarios, same as 107. If you want to secure a top 4 pick, it's likely going to cost you 2 late firsts of value. So if you're giving up 108, you're probably also going to have to give up 111 or 110 to get up to 103 or 104 or something like that. I would consider doing it if the price is right, but for me, I'm okay holding the 108 for now and seeing if you get lucky and it becomes a fulcrum, tier break point in one quarterback draft, then it's possible that pick is going to have more value post draft. Trade down scenarios, again, 108 to 202 will likely be like a flat tier for a lot of people. So if you wanted to, and you're in a complete orphan rebuild productive struggle, somebody wants the 108 for whatever reason right now, and they're going to give you the 111, the 202 in a second next year, by all means do that. But again, I'm much more likely to hold this pick than I would be to trade it unless somebody blew my doors off for a trade. We do have a couple trades for a veteran listed here. Somebody sold in a 1 quarterback league the 108 and 207 for Jordan Addison. Again, I think that's a fine move. Would I have made it this instant? Maybe not, but I think it's a fine move. Maybe you're doing this because Kirk Cousins' uncertainty is why Jordan Addison was attainable. I understand that. Same goes for this trade too. 1 quarterback, start 10, you acquire Saquon for the 108. Saquon's a free agent. Maybe they don't know what to do with him right now. Again, these 2 deals both felt like deals that could wait though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more willing to do the 108, 207 for Jordan Addison one because I believe in Jordan Addison, and he's also the type of young wide receiver that can still accumulate value. JJ McCarthy lands with the Vikings. People can convince themselves, oh, well, long term, we don't have the uncertainty factor that Kirk Cousins is an older quarterback coming off an Achilles. We have a young, fresh 21-year-old that Jordan Addison is going to be attached to. In this instance, because of inherently knowing how the market will behave for young, appreciated quarterbacks with the wide receiver attached to them, I'm comfortable making the Jordan Addison move. But like you said with the Saquon one, making this deal now just doesn't really scream to me. Like, I understand it if you were to make this deal in August, early September, because you want to acquire the points and you know exactly the situation with Saquon. Fine with doing that now, then. But at this point, it's like, if Trey Benson goes to the right spot, if Jonathan Brooks goes to the right spot, I can tell you right now that they're going to be valued higher than Saquon Barkley in dynasty drafts.
Yeah, again, I understand making the move like you talked about there, but with that 108 pick, you're going to be in premier wide receiver range for the most part.
Yep.
If you're contending, I think it's fine to send the 108 for a contending wide receiver like Jordan Addison. It's just the problem is I would not do it this instant. I would wait until after the draft when you know what that 108 pick you're actually looking at. These players are going to be off the board. This is the group in the cluster that I'm going to be looking at here. So again, I tend to lean towards selling this pick for a veteran if you're a contender at 108. I just wouldn't do it this instant.
Yeah, no, I agree. The timing is definitely key. And whatever you're going to be able to do now, imagine that you can do that plus 20% more after the rookie draft once people have more certainty of what the asset they're acquiring is.
Yeah, and I guess the rationale here with Saquon is that you're maybe acquiring him low before he signs with like a really good landing spot, but you're inheriting way more risk than you need to be inheriting at that point in time. It's like, will Saquon be much more expensive than the 108 if he goes to the Dallas Cowboys on a 3-year contract? Probably not. I don't imagine you'd have to pay. Like, maybe it costs you 108 and a third to get him, or 108 and a late second in a 1 quarterback league. I don't think that if he signed with the nuts landing spot on a big contract, he would cost you the 104 all of a sudden, and you got way ahead of the curve. I think you're probably paying what he's worth regardless of what happens, to be honest.
Yeah, completely agree. It's just the nature of the running back position, especially when it comes to vets.
Yeah, for sure. So again, a little bit of a longer video here. Hopefully, if you guys have one of these rookie picks, we gave you guys some insight on what you should be doing right now, what you should be maybe thinking of doing post-draft, what cluster of prospects you should be looking at. We will be doing this for 109 to 112. It'll be even more hypotheticals in that one, talking about exactly what we would like to be doing. But regardless, I do think that this is a fun conversation to have. Again, it's not overly analysis driven unless you're making trades right now. But at the time that we do this post draft, we're actually going to have real concrete information on which players we would actually select at those picks. Right now, it's more of a cluster of players, a group of players, rather than exactly the names that we would tether to those picks. So if you guys have a bunch of dynasty leagues, you have a bunch of rookie picks, don't make the mistake of looking at this pick and being like 109, that's going to be Troy Franklin. 111, that's going to be Ladd McConkey. It's like, it's a fluid tier. It's a fluid cluster of players based on what happens post-draft. That's how you want to think about your rookie picks right now, which positions are going to be rich in that area of the draft, which, running backs could you be targeting, which quarterbacks could you be targeting. It's all going to depend on what happens come, April 25th, 2024. So again, if you did enjoy this video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, check out all of our Dynasty and rookie content, including our top 30 prospects written up, talked about in our draft guide. Our top 50 prospects will be coming out about a week and a half from today on March 15th. That'll be linked down below in the description, flockfantasy.com. Promo code FSE is how you can get access to our draft guide, all of our rookie rankings, Superflex, one quarterback, Dynasty trade value charts, everything going on over there on Flock Fantasy. That will be linked down below, like I said. So with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.